A really common issue that students keep coming across is that of I've drawn something and it's disappeared. I'm referencing something in and somehow highlighting symbols have disappeared, that kind of thing. And there's a number of different things you can do to try and work out where your stuff has gone. Um, Almost always it's something to do with visibility settings in classes and things assigning themselves to classes that you may have not created yourself and therefore not turned on or off. And so I thought I'd use this little example to show you how to go about fixing that kind of problem. So what we're looking at here is a referenced drawing. So all the referencing has worked really nicely, and if we look in our layers, you can see there's quite a lot of layers here, and some in italics referenced in. Now right at the bottom there's a lighting design layer. If I turn that on, you'll notice that some lighting instruments appear here, and there seem to be some here, but we can't actually see the actual lighting instruments. We can just see the label legend poking through. So something seems to be missing. Now the first thing that I would fix here is my stacking order. Because this layer is sitting in the stacking order of layers right at the bottom, even though these lanterns are drawn at a certain height. Let's have a look. We've got this one at 4 meters, this one at 5.2 meters. Other stuff is sort of blocking out. They seem to be disappearing, for example, here behind the truss. Now, for me, that would be quite hard to kind of orientate myself, because I'd like to see my lanterns. So one thing I'd recommend you do is, in your stacking order, try and mimic at least roughly the height of the things that are drawn in that layer, so that things don't disappear. For example, if there was a lantern drawn somewhere here where the steel deck is, because the steel deck layer is in the stacking order higher than the lighting design layer, even if the lantern is drawn higher in terms of its 3D Z value, it would disappear behind the steel deck because the layer sits on top. So I'm just going to drag my lighting design layer higher up, and just for ease in this particular example, just stick it right at the top. That's not always the right thing to do, but for this example, that's what I'll do. And press OK. So now you can see all of my lighting instruments sit on top of all the other stuff, which of course is not necessarily natural, since they would be hung under this truss. So, you can decide for yourself what works for your drawing, but you can see a few things have appeared here. In this particular case, these are practicals on stage, and they were sitting underneath my steel deck, not because they're physically underneath there, but because of the stacking order. That's the first thing I would try. Now, there's still stuff missing, obviously. So a good tool to try and find out where things are is the visibility tool. Once you're on that and you have it set to classes, because I don't want to go through all of my layers and classes to tick on things on and off in terms of the visibility, this is a really useful tool to try and find things. Of course, I could just turn all visibilities on in all layers and all classes and find it that way, but then I have to then go in afterwards again and reset how I want my view to look. So while I've got the visibility tool selected, if I press the V key, it makes every class visible. So I can see the lanterns are there, but they are not visible. Now what's interesting is that if I hover above them, it tells me what class they're in, and they're in class none. And class none is set to visible. It tells me in that little bracket. And if I try and select one, let's go back to my selection tool. You can see this one, it's locked because it's referenced in. It's sitting in class none. Layer lighting design. Layer lighting design is visible and sitting on top. And class none is active, visible. So why can't I see my light? Well, the reason I can't see my light is to do with how this particular lighting instrument was drawn. Because if I go into my resource browser in this drawing, because it has been referenced in, I can't just have a look at this lighting instrument symbol in here. So for this example, I've just created a little untitled empty file and imported this instrument in so we can have a look at its 2D components. So having a look at this, you can see that it is drawn in a class lighting incandescent. So this polygon, that is basically the 2D element of this hybrid symbol that is used as a lighting instrument, has something embedded, a class embedded in it. So when this is drawn in this referenced file and then referenced into my TSD working file, that class becomes something that I need to look out for, because it still exists. It's sort of imported into my drawing. And if I go into my classes, you can see that my lighting class here, my lighting group of classes, has architectural and incandescent, none of which I've created specifically, but they have come in with those instruments that were drawn, and you can see the incandescent one is turned off. So once I turn that on, I get all of my lanterns, and you can see there were a few more missing here in the middle and in various other places. So usually when things disappear in a drawing, it's something to do with that kind of thing, where because of the way the symbol was initially drawn, there are things that are assigned to classes which then import in and are by default invisible because you haven't turned them on yourself. And to find that, one useful tool is the visibility tool, because that can sort of highlight that kind of problem.